Hi everyone, and goodbye to judgment. Yes, that's today's topic. Goodbye, judgment. In my last video, we explored forgiveness, and in today's video, I am going to, so to say, peel the cosmic onion on non judgment. I liken it to peeling an onion because to truly abide in non judgment as a state of being, as our default setting, rather than occasional acts or attempts to not judge, we need to go through layer after layer of understanding how non judgment truly transpires. Now, non judgment is a very beautiful approach to life. It's a state of mind more than a quality to incorporate. In fact, it is judgment and its polarities that creates most of the imbalances we see in our world. Wars, disease, political mayhem, terrorism, and in a more personal sense, living in non judgment can be a deeply healing process, freeing up so much of the clutter that keeps us attached to the ego notion, freeing up so much of the inner debris that we don't even realize we're carrying as we judge this, that, and the other as a routine part of life. Of course, as always, when I speak, I realize that the core of all these spiritual qualities that I am sharing with you, non judgment, forgiveness, self responsibility, acceptance, is non doership. The very core is non doership. But non doership takes years of spiritual ripening. So it is these simpler spiritual qualities that enable that out of reach non doership. And when the doer does dissolve, these qualities are amplified into our natural state of being. So come, dear friends, let's peel the cosmic onion on non-judgment. So I'm going to begin with the first layer, thou shalt not judge. Now this is one of the first principles we come across in any spiritual quest. All texts and all masters, all traditions emphasize this, thou shalt not judge. Now, this is not because these qualities are spiritually correct. They are spiritually correct because they enhance, firstly, our day-to-day life, and secondly, at a deeper level, they actually help us go beyond the doer. So when I began my journey and I thought, oh, it's spiritually correct for me to forgive and to not judge, till I realized it's got nothing to do with that. It actually changes my day-to-day life, and of course, it helps me in ripening my spiritual journey. So let's start with a very basic understanding that we live in a vibration universe, everything is energy functions according to certain universal laws. And one of the basic laws, as most of you know, is like attracts like. Therefore, what you think, feel, what you focus on is what you attract as the people, things, and events we call our life. Now, if our focus is largely positive, tilted towards the positive, we further attract positive vibrations and experiences. But if our focus is largely negative or tilted towards the negative, that's what we attract more of. Now, I know many of you are going to say, what has all this got to do with non-judgment? We know all about the power of positive thinking. We know how it helps in our day-to-day life. But what does this have to do with non-judgment? And dearest friends, this is the first eureka that we unravel. Non-judgment is one of the best and most long-term ways to move from a negative and depleting focus to a positive and life-enhancing focus. So, if you live in the usual judgment, no matter how trivial it might appear to you, then your focus is often on the negative. On what isn't right, what doesn't work, what should not be, that's not how it should be. And that's what you're creating for self, you don't even know it. But in non-judgment, you're basically moving away from this constant and often subconscious negative labeling into a more and more positive focus, into a state where there are no labels, and therefore creating a better life for yourself. So, dearest friends, before I move to the next layer, I want you to see the subtlety of this. How through non-judgment, positive thinking becomes a default setting. You don't have to do affirmations. You don't have to try and think positively. It becomes a lens you view life through. So we come to the second layer. There is nothing to judge outside us. As we spiritually evolve, we move from the first layer, the first instruction actually, thou shalt not judge, to the awareness that there is nothing outside us to judge. Now, this is a very important shift because we become aware that the world and its people are but reflections of self. Everything or everyone is but an aspect of myself that I have chosen to see externally, to help me evolve, to help me expand the positive, to help me disempower the negative, like mirrors helping me to see outside what I can't see inside. And as we truly live this, we just can't judge anything outside us. As we know, it's about me, my learning, even if I can't see that in the now. And therefore, dearest friends, our focus automatically shifts. And see the beauty of this, from judging the outside to taking self-responsibility, from judging the other to reflecting within and working with oneself instead. Therefore, once again, before I go to the next layer, can you see the subtle shift from judging to self-reflection and self-responsibility, from being a victim to the self-empowerment that we can be the change we wish to see. So reflect on this and I'll take you to the third layer. Now the third layer, true non-judgment is not in judging oneself either. So we have moved from thou shalt not judge to there is nothing outside to judge to there is nothing inside to judge either. This is very important because sometimes initially when you look within as the source of everything outside, you may move into self-blame, consternation, guilt. And while this self-condemnation or self-judgment or judgment turn on yourself is equally and very important to drop, it can initially serve a purpose. Because when you realize it's all about you, you cannot distance yourself from that quality that you've been projecting onto others or on the outside. And perhaps for the first time, you make efforts to change the source within rather than simply pass the buck outside. This is growth. This is evolution. However, self-blame is not a healthy frame of mind. And once it's accomplished its purpose, once it's made you look within, you move into the awareness that true non-judgment is in not judging self either. Why? Because you move into the awareness that everything that happens through you is towards your soul growth, towards evolving human consciousness, and your limitations are valiant soul efforts you have willfully come with to see perhaps on the outside and to move away from within. So just the way you don't judge your child for making mistakes, you move into self-acceptance, which is not turning a blind eye to required areas of growth, but the attitude that you view yourself with and the areas of growth. Now this is of great significance because your relationship with yourself is your primary relationship and the cornerstone of all other relationships. If you are self-critical, you will find others to criticize you. If you feel insignificant, you will experience that in your relationships. Indeed, the more you accept self, the more you let your brothers and sisters off the hook. And can you see? Judgment is falling aside. So see the subtlety, how each layer is taking you deeper and deeper into where judgment cannot exist. So reflect on that, and I will take you to yet another layer. So we come to the next layer of the onion, the fourth layer, and a leap in non-judgment. Because we move from the instruction, thou shalt not judge, to there is nothing outside to judge, there is nothing inside to judge. Now we've come to a big leap. There is nothing like bad or evil to judge, within or on the outside. We understand there is nothing like bad or evil because everything that exists, however seemingly wrong or difficult it might be to understand, are aspects of consciousness experiencing itself in different ways. We become aware that everything that exists, no matter how challenging it is for us to accept, is but an aspect of the one God playing out its role for the higher good of creation, even if we can't see it in the now. We become aware that everything that exists, however seemingly wrong or difficult it might be, has a larger soul purpose that is being played out. Through this leap of awareness that there is nothing bad or evil or sinful, judgment is certainly loosening its grip on us. It's becoming redundant, and we are subtly but surely moving from judgment into acceptance, into a state of allowance, also called unconditional love for self and for others. As discussed in my YouTube on love, unconditional love is not a state of emotion for everyone. It is this not judging, accepting, a state of complete allowance for whatever everyone is or is experiencing or is going through, because there's a larger reason behind that. So think about this, and I'll take you to the next layer, the fifth layer. Now this one is going to be a big revelation, a big leap, a big eureka. Now so far, non-judgment has always meant trying not to judge anything as bad, as negative, as wrong, as less. But, dearest friends, a natural extension of not judging anything as bad means not judging anything as good. Why? Because when we judge something as good or pure or higher or finer, our negative judgment is only hidden, as everything that does not fit in with our criteria of good, higher, finer is actually automatically rendered lower or bad or doesn't fit in. And indeed, a subliminal judgment is still present. Deep down, we are still judging things as not good. Indeed, this is an insidious judgment, dangerous because of your very unawareness of it. This not judging anything as good is the final step. It's moving beyond labels, beyond duality, beyond good, bad, right, wrong, beyond anything to judge. So do you see what's happening? We are moving from judging into witnessing, into a state beyond duality, into a state beyond labels, into what's called witnessing, observation, equanimity. Do you see this? This subtlety from judgment to witnessing? So reflect on the 5 layers and think beloveds, of the profound importance that non-judgment can bring into your life, the subtle shifts within its practice, moving into a positive focus, moving into self-reflection, moving into self-responsibility, moving into self-acceptance, and even more into unconditional love, and even more into witnessing. Therefore, accepting each moment as it is without judgment of good or bad, therefore moving into non-resistance and living in the now. Goodbye, judgment. Hello, acceptance, love, witnessing, living in the now. So think on these 5 layers. Thou shalt not judge starts that way. It's usually an instruction that you try to follow. Second layer, there is nothing outside us to judge. Everything is simply a mirror. So we go within, we take self-responsibility, we work it out within. Thirdly, there's nothing to judge within us either, because all our limitations and our weaknesses are something we've come for towards soul growth. Fourthly, there is nothing like bad, evil, sinful. Everything has a purpose, everything has a deeper reason, and therefore there is nothing as bad or sinful. And lastly, we should move away from even judging anything as good or higher and finer, because in that, the lower or bad is only a hidden implication. We move from labels, from duality, from the opposites into witnessing. So think on these, reflect on them, allow non-judgment to not be a quality you're practicing. Let it be a state of being, an approach to life, the lens you view life through. Lots of love, lots of blessings, Divya. I'm going to follow this up with a part 2 because I've received a lot of questions. So I'm going to choose 1 or 2 questions which I sort of feel need to be answered. I will probably add it to this video. See you. Looking forward. So the first question which came to me, how can we live a day-to-day life without seeing and responding to people's actions or modes of behavior? It's not practical, it's not feasible. Good question, and something I had grappled with many years ago. So let's point out that there is a subtle but all-important difference between judgment and observation. Now, observation is a part of life naturally. We will observe, we will discern towards making choices best for us in the now. Simply put, judgment arises in the limited self, and observation and discernment arises in equanimity, in the higher self. Now, of course, we can and we will observe and discern. We will have preferences, we will choose what we resonate to, what works for us, what doesn't. So, for example, we may view someone as a bully or some situation as contentious, or we may, say something that we need to stay away from. Of course, we will observe. Of course, we will discern. But please listen to this. It's not judgment when we don't add the inner labels of that thing or that quality being good, bad, ugly, sinful. It's not judgment when it's not followed up by the usual inner chaos. She should not, how could she, how can he, I would never, it's so wrong, oh my God, how horrible of them, etc., etc. It's not judgment when we don't render this inner verdict about our observations, when there is no censure, no reviling, no denouncing, no reproaching within. Then it remains observation, discernment, making choices, preference. Now, this is a subtle but important understanding that in layman language, it might sound the same. Because we can't move away from the spoken language and we need to use words on a day-to-day basis. So yes, we may say X is angry or Y is arrogant or B is not a really sensible state of the head, but we are not judging if the inner plethora is absent. If I'm not adding to that, that the person is arrogant or doesn't make a great president or is an angry person, if I'm not adding all the inner verdict, how could she should not, I would never, it's so horrible, it's so sinful, then if you're not adding that, then our energy signature is not emanating judgment. So words will be used. Don't get trapped by your words. Because if you are firmly planted in non-judgment, the words will not vibrate to the frequency of judgment. When we first imbibe all of this, we can't move away from words. So we actually start using a mental apostrophe for everything around each such word. So we will say X has been good, or someone has cheated, or that person is arrogant, or he's not a great head of state. So we're using these apostrophes. Why? Mental apostrophes. We are trying to convey that while we are using the word, we're not using it with the judgment it's usually used. It's devoid of the judgment normally implied in it, and therefore we use these words. So of course, my dear friends, we can observe, we can discern, we can choose, we can have preferences, we can lay our boundaries, we can step back. That's not judgment. The second question. So should we change our language? Now you know me. It's never about changing anything on the outside. It's about an inner change, not an outer change. Now words are only a chalice, a cup, a container containing the energy you impart to them. By themselves, they don't really have any energy of their own. I'm sure you've experienced sometime or the other saying, oh, she's such a good girl, without meaning that she is good, in fact meaning it negatively. So the word was good, but your energy was you meant it negatively. Or perhaps you've seen some gorgeously expensive dress and said, oh my God, how lethal a dress, how murderous a dress, without really meaning it lethal and murderous. So it's the energy we add to the words. The words by themselves are quite empty. If you really think of this, it brings us to a profound understanding that if we were all to use all these adjectives without the inner judgment, words like arrogant or angry or humble or calm, without the negative or positive judgment usually inherent in the word, as witness, not caught in the opposites. If critical mass can make this change, wow, we will indeed change the very energy behind our spoken language, where words will not automatically imply a negative or positive verdict. We will develop a new language without changing the language to be a language without labels, because inside there will be no labels. How freeing for the newer generation. Think of that. Not needing a new language, but a new approach to seeing people, to seeing life, and therefore using words differently. So I'm getting my third question. Let's see what that is. Okay, that's a good question. So I'm going to take this question now. Nice one. So, okay, Divya, you've spoken about non-judgment attracting a better life. How? Because for me, that's my focus now, rather than all the deeper spiritual stuff that you've spoken about. So that's great. Yeah, it's very good. It's very important that we first improve our day-to-day life, and then automatically, once we have a balanced life, we go deeper, or we can think deeper. So in answer to you, let me quote Tukaram, an ancient mystic poet. I'm going to quote him. I could not lie anymore, so I started to call my dog God. First he looked confused, then he started smiling, and then he even danced. I kept at it. Now he doesn't even bite. I am wondering if this might work on people. Tukaram. Did you get it? Our judgment is an act of our perception, the way we perceive things. And I don't know if you know, Our perception is an act of creation. How we perceive, what we perceive is what we are creating. The way we see people, events, and things, the way we perceive the world is what we are going to see or experience more of. It is what will reflect back to us. It is what we are creating or manifesting. Therefore, dearest friends, our judgment is our perception, and our perception is an act of creation. So, if we consistently see ourselves as a failure, or view the environment as unfair, or think our country is corrupt, or feel our world is disaster ridden, we are going to experience those acts of creation. Dearest friend, stop smudging it up. Move from judgment into the masterstroke of appreciation, and you will see, view, create more things to appreciate, what you call a better life. Let me give you a little exercise, a little tip to do. Very often we think we are not judging, or we're thinking positively, especially those of us on the spiritual path think, I've stopped judging and I'm thinking only positively. So for all of you, I would tell you to sort of set a series of alarms on your mobile phones, to go off at random times. And when that alarm goes off, stop whatever you were doing and become aware what was going through your mind at that very moment. Was it a life-affirming thought, something positive, a positive focus? Or was it life-negating? Was it judgment? What was going on in your mind? What is going on in your mind? What is your mind filled with? How are you perceiving life? What are you creating? I will end with these 3 questions. I hope you all have enjoyed the talk, and let's see what my next subject will be about. I shall be back soon. Lots of love, lots of blessings from Divya.